Hi everyone, and welcome to Open Forensics Lab. In this video, we are talking about extemporaneous speaking, often called extemp. Extemp is one of the limited preparation events in speech and debate. That means speakers do not arrive with a fully written and memorized speech. Instead, they receive a set of questions, usually about domestic or international current events. Choose one question and prepare a speech in a limited amount of time. In many tournaments, extemp speakers have 30 minutes to prepare, and then they deliver a speech that is up to 7 minutes long. The goal of extemp is to answer a current events question with a clear argument, organized analysis, and credible sources. A good goal is to include about 7 sources in the speech. These sources help support your claims, provide context, and show that your answer is grounded in current information. During your prep time, you will have the chance to complete online research. But you're not just reporting the news. You are explaining what is happening, why it matters, and what conclusion the audience should reach. Today, we'll talk about 1, the types of questions you can expect to see, 2, how to structure the introduction, 3, a common structure for the main points, and 4, how to close with a clear conclusion. Extemp questions ask different kinds of things. Some questions ask you to predict what might happen. Some ask you to evaluate whether a policy is working. Some ask why something happened. Others ask what a government, organization, or leader should do next. For example, an extemp question might sound like, should the United States increase federal funding for climate adaptation projects? In your speech, you would want to answer the question directly and support that answer with analysis and evidence. You also want to do this in an organized way, so let's talk about the structure of the introduction. An extemp introduction usually includes 5 parts: an attention getter, background, the question, the answer, and a preview. First is the attention getter. The attention getter should pull the audience into the topic. It might be a brief story, a surprising fact, a clear explanation of the stakes, or something similar. For example, if the question is about climate adaptation, you might begin by describing a recent flood, wildfire, or heat wave. The attention getter should not feel random. It should connect directly to the question. Second is background. Background gives the audience the context they need to understand the issue. This is also where you link your attention getter to your specific question. Use this as an opportunity to address questions like what's happening, what major conflict, policy, or trend does the audience need to understand, and why is this question being asked now? This is also a good place to include an early source citation, because it can help establish credibility and show that your speech is grounded in current events. Third, clearly state the question. You might say, this raises today's question. Should the United States increase federal funding for climate adaptation projects? Stating the question matters because it reminds the judge exactly what you are answering. And fourth, provide your answer. Your answer is the thesis of the speech. It should be direct and specific. If the question is close-ended, your thesis may be a simple yes or no. If the question is open-ended, your thesis may be more developed. And fifth, preview your main points. For example, to understand why the U.S. should increase federal funding for climate adaptation, we will first examine the financial cost of inaction, second, consider the risks facing vulnerable communities, and finally, analyze how adaptation funding can strengthen infrastructure. That gives us a complete introduction: attention getter, background, question, answer, and preview. Now let's move to the body of the speech. Most extemp speeches have 3 main points. Each main point should function as an argument that supports your thesis. A helpful structure is claim, warrant, data, impact. The claim is usually the first sentence of your main point, and it is what you are trying to prove. For example, first, federal funding for climate adaptation would reduce the long-term cost of disasters. Then, the warrant explains why the claim is true. Here, you're elaborating on your reasoning and articulating the logic for listeners. Next, the data is the evidence that supports the claim and warrant. In extemp, data is usually a statistic, expert testimony, or an example. Sources need to be orally cited and include the date. Finally, the impact explains why the point matters and how it relates to your question. If you're aiming for about 7 sources in the speech, you will want to use at least 1 source in the introduction and 2 sources in each main point. Between main points, use clear transition statements. A good transition briefly reviews the point you just made and previews the point you are about to make. For example, now that we understand how funding could reduce long-term disaster costs, let's examine why that funding is especially important for vulnerable communities. This kind of transition helps the audience follow the structure of the speech. Finally, end with a clear conclusion. An extemp conclusion should restate the question, restate the answer, review the main points, and end with creative impact. Ideally, you close in a way that is rhetorically powerful, which can be accomplished through word choice, delivery, or thematic emphasis, and in a way that brings the speech full circle with a reference to your attention getter. That final sentence gives the speech a sense of closure and impact. Extemp can feel intimidating because it asks you to think quickly, but at its core, the event is built on a clear process. Choose a question, answer it directly, support that answer with organized reasoning and credible evidence, and explain why your answer matters. Thanks for watching Open Forensics Lab.